Michael B. Jordan has just been cast as the Human Torch. In fact, the movie, The Fantastic Four, is already in post-production, and people are livid about the fact that there is a black man who's been cast as Johnny Storm, a.k.a. the Human Torch. Now, he avoided social media and the internet in general because he just did not want to see what people were saying until he realized that, hey, there is a race component to this, and I just kind of want to check the pulse of society and see what they think about this. And what he found was, of course, a little discouraging. People, especially huge comic book fans who have been following this comic for a very long time, are upset at the fact that the movie has broken the tradition of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed superhero, and they've moved on to an African-American man. Now, here's what Michael B. Jordan had to say about all this drama. He says, sometimes you have to be the person who stands up and says, I'll be the one to shoulder all this hate. I'll take the brunt for the next couple of generations. I'll put that responsibility on myself. To the trolls on the internet, I want to say, get your head out of your computer. Go outside and walk around. Look at the people walking next to you. Look at your friends' friends and who they're interacting with. And just understand this is the world we live in. It's okay to like it. So I read his entire response to all the criticism he's been getting, and I think it was a very well-written response. He was actually very sympathetic to those who were criticizing him being cast in the movie, and he says, look, it's tradition, and now all of a sudden things are changing and it's a little uncomfortable. But you know what? It's 2015. And when you really think about it, this comic started back in 1961. Things are obviously very different, and I think it makes sense for things to evolve as time goes on. Christian, what do you think about this? Make your point.
Oh, I think it's great. I mean, I just feel like that nowadays people are too sensitive. Like, people live in these little bubbles where they think, they think like their parents thought, and their parents thought like their parents thought. And it's just like some people need to pop that bubble and just, like you said, take a look at the world around them. I mean, people are different. Like, we're all made up of the same thing, but we're like so different in so many ways. And sometimes people just have to open their eyes and see that. And I think it's great. The way he handled it was great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So much class in the way that he handled it. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, it was a really well-written response. It was well thought out, and it was not reactionary, I think, in a lot of ways. I do think that we, as the media, or some extension of the media, do give a lot of credence to people on the internet, in chat rooms. Nobody uses chat rooms. On Twitter, YouTube comments, we always say, hey, let's go check the pulse of the nation and go see what people are saying on Twitter. But that's not a really accurate representation also of the entire dialogue that's going on. It's a very small group of people who are, quite frankly, shitheads a lot of the time, and they sort of get off on being social agitators and being shitheads. And I think that the thing we have to just know is that while there are some people who are out there who are very, very hostile, that's not an accurate representation of everybody. And I think that going forward, hopefully those people, we won't give them so much credence.
That's such a great point. The squeaky wheel always gets the attention. And oftentimes when we go on Twitter, we focus way too much on the fake outrage, and we think that that's symbolic of what's going on in society. It's not necessarily true. Now, describe a time that you felt the need to stand up for yourself, Christian.
This was a couple months ago, I think, at work. This is the first one that I could think of. So there was this lady, I bartend. Cool. So there was this lady, she had had a few drinks, had some food or whatever, and I had dropped off the check. And it was just sitting there, and she was just having a conversation with somebody else, and it was like time for me to get out of there. My shift was over. She was just waiting. I went back and checked, nothing. Went back again, checked, and then finally I went back and checked, and she's like, stop coming by, I haven't signed it yet. And usually the mild-mannered me would usually be like, just tuck my tail in between my legs and just walk away. But I was like, well, I'm trying to get out of here and you're holding me up, or I'd said something like that. So I was like, oh, I was kind of impressed. And she ended up leaving me like a great tip afterwards. I was like, maybe she respected me.
Wow.
Yeah, all right.
But I usually don't do that. I'm usually very mild-mannered. I don't really speak up.
I like that. I like aggressive.
My heart was beating and I was real nervous, but I was like, yeah, I'm glad I did it.
Well, you've stood up for yourself around me a few times as well.
Damn right. Damn right.
Andy, what about you?
A couple of weeks ago, my friends and I were dressed up as old women, and we went to a bar, and this bartender just kept coming around, and he was just like pestering us. I'm just kidding. I don't know. Standing up for yourself is not funny. I think that it's, but I will say, I'll try to be honest and real, is that a lot of times, you're dealing with especially in this industry, it's all like very subjective. What you think is interesting, what you think is good or right or funny, or where a story should go, where a piece should go. And there are people who are in positions of authority who also have their own preconceived notions for what they think that the piece or whatever the content should look like or should say. And I frequently, the older I get, the better I feel saying, "Fuck you guys," and just kind of going and doing what I think is right, what I think is funny. And,
yeah.
And so that's a really wonderful thing. I think as you get older, at least as I've gotten older, you settle into that a little bit. You become more confident.
You stop caring
and you stop
so
saying,
much
like,
about what other people
right.
think, and you kind of go with your own convictions. Absolutely. I'm going to give an example of a time when I stood up for myself, and it actually was a disaster. It happened recently, and we were doing the live show on TYT, and then we did it in like the new studio, which is this studio right now. And something sounded like it was about to fall, like the set was falling apart. And I freaked out, and I looked, and there was one of the big lights, and this thing is huge. It looked like it was going to tip over and fall on a guest that we had on the show. And so I freaking panicked. I wanted to go to break. I asked to go to break like a few times, and we didn't. And I didn't know what was happening in the control room. I didn't know why we didn't go to break. And so I was forced to continue on with the next story, and then as I was doing the next story, I heard laughter in the control room, and I was like, oh, they think this is funny. This is not funny, okay? So then I went into the control room, and I like lost my temper, which doesn't happen ever. Like, I lose my temper, but usually not at work. And in that moment, I thought I was standing up for myself, but the reality is sometimes you got to take a step back and figure out what was going on behind the scenes before you lose your shit. Anyway, guys, everyone in the control room, this is my way of apologizing for what I did last week.
You didn't even say sorry? This is how you're doing it?
I did say sorry, but I still feel like guilty about it. So we have freaking awesome employees here, and I overreacted. Anyway, guys, tell us what you think. Give me an opportunity to hear when you have defended yourself or stood up for yourself. I love hearing those stories. So comment in the section below, and we'll see you soon.